What's up, pretty gang? It's your favorite nail tech Peaches back with another video, and today we're going to be working on some extremely damaged toenails. Not the worst that we've ever seen, but definitely in need of some TLC. I'm going to tell you the story behind how her toenails got like this and exactly step by step on how I brought them back to this. Okay, so before we go ahead and get into her feet, we're going to go ahead and make sure you guys have checked the description box below. Make sure you click on all those coupon codes, visit my Amazon storefront, follow me on all social media, Nailsbyprettyface, subscribe, turn those notifications on because you don't want to miss out. All right, so as you guys have seen, I've been gone for a couple days. I've just been tired, working hard, trying to fit everybody in before Christmas, and this particular client was one of those clients I was trying to fit in. Okay, she messaged me for kind of like a consultation, like when people have damaged toenails and they are booking for a reconstruction. Typically they will DM me, and she showed me pictures of her toenails, and of course I asked what happened, how to get like this, and she did say it was purely from damage. So based on that, I did tell her, like, okay, I'll take a look and see what I think at the appointment, because that's the only way you're gonna really know. So what you're seeing me do here is kind of test her toenails and see what's going on. So the toenails that I'm testing right now, I'm trying to see how much of this is really her toenail and how much is nail bed, because looks can be deceiving. You have to feel what's hard, what's soft. I'm like, can you feel that? Is there a distinction between this and that? Okay, and come to find out, now the toes I'm going to show you right now are not hers, they're her twin sisters, but she said they were exactly the same. This is how long her big toenails were. She had an injury in which she tripped and basically her toenails came off. Okay, this was months ago in September. They're growing back really well. Unfortunately, the damage that's already been done, so all that dark, all that stuff at the tips, that's just gonna have to grow out. Okay, like I was saying, with this toenail right here that I am kind of like testing and touching, it was kind of like, it wasn't growing in as flat as the other one. It was kind of like a mound, and so I wanted to make sure, was that whole mound actual toenail, or was some of it, you know, the nail bed? What was going on? And from what I could see, like you'll see later on once I start filing and stuff like that, it all was nail. It was actual nail that was coming in. So that's why I'm like, okay, feeling around the skin. Now for this one, I'm telling her, because she did think there was some acrylic left, and so she had booked a removal, but I was telling her, I said, I understand why you thought there was acrylic left. And she said the lady who she went to for the removal was the same person, well, the same nail shop that put the toenails on, and they were telling her this is as low as we can file it off. That's your real toenail. And I did confirm with her, no, this is your real toenail. That like gap that you see, or that line of demarcation, that is the old toenail versus the new toenail growing in. I said it may try and grow the other toenail off eventually, but it was very sturdy and very secure. So in this instance, I deemed it safe to go ahead and service her, because although the toenails, they don't look the best, they are growing back in healthily. So this is where I was showing her, like, okay, see all this? This is not going to go away. Okay, this is very attached to you. I'm showing her the difference between the new healthy nail growing in versus the old nail that was clearly broken, and, well, not broken, but it was something. Okay, so for those of you who are like don't have the knowledge of how long does it take for toenails to grow back, typically if you lose a whole toenail, it's going to take close to a year. And I say close to a year because everyone's growth rates are a little bit differently. Some people get luckier than others. For fingernails, it's going to be close to 6 months. So she's got a really good amount of growth, considering she did say her toenails pretty much came off, broke down. Okay, so I was asking her further questions. You know, I'm getting started. I'm like, okay, I feel safe to prep you. I did sand down some of this thickness a little bit because this part of the toenail is dead, so it's not gonna hurt her or anything. And of course I was asking, like, during the whole process, does this feel okay, does this hurt, blah blah. She was fine. So I was asking her questions like, how did it happen, how did you trip? She said she tripped over like a dog bed or something like that. And how I got the picture of that nail is, she said her sister was on the phone with her or texting, and her sister was like, oh wow, you know, eventually down the process she was like, I want to come to you, this, that, and the other. I'm like, okay, cool. So her sister showed her the toenail, because I was asking questions, you know, because her sister was on the phone as well. And when she sent me that, I'm like, wow, is this what you meant by they basically were just filling her toenails for a year? Okay, So this is all prepped and ready to go, and I was showing her, I'm like, see, it doesn't look so bad when it's like prepped and primed and things like that. And just telling her the discoloration is not going to go away, that's going to grow off, but it looks like your toenail is going to grow in pretty regular, right? But she was telling me that the place she was going to, they put a nail tip on, and the toenails were extremely long. They were long, okay, like over her toenail, over her toe, excuse me. But then every time she asked, hey, can I have a new toenail, whatever, they just filled them over and over for about 8 months. So when she tripped, and I said, okay, that makes sense, because I asked her, okay, they put a tip on your toenail? She said, yes, they did. So when she tripped, both came ripped off. Then we got into talking about her job and her work, and come to find out, she wears steel-toed boots. Now, this is the second client that I have shown on this channel that has damage from steel-toed boots, because it's not enough that, okay, the nails already had tips on them, right? She tripped in her steel-toed boots. So, of course, her toenails were extremely long. She had steel-toed boots on. She tripped over something, and the toenails came right off, okay? And so that's why I tell everyone, number one, stop putting nail tips on people's toenails, because it is extremely risky as far as injury. And number two, if you are wearing tight shoes or boots or anything like that, your toenails should not be long at all. They should be pretty even with your actual toe, if not shorter. All right, so let's go ahead and get into how did I fix this. So this toenail is pretty normal, I'll be honest with you, the way it's growing. So what I decided to do was do it like how I would do a normal overlay. I basically just went ahead, put the acrylic on, and we're building the tip first. Now, typically this type of discoloration will show through anything, right? So I did let her know that, but this time around it actually didn't, and I was very pleased with that, right? So because we're building up the tip, you want to make sure the acrylic is not getting trapped under there. So that's why you see me kind of scooping out that underneath, is because I want people to be able to get under there and clean underneath the acrylic and their toenails as they grow out. You do not want to have acrylic trapped in all different weird ways, because if moisture gets under there, it's gonna wreak havoc. People ask me, do acrylic toes cause fungus? No, acrylic toes on their own don't cause fungus, but trapped moisture will. And that doesn't matter if it's acrylic toes, your real toenail, it doesn't matter. It's the moisture, okay? So I'm just pretty much squaring out the toenail. The length was not bad. Like, she had a decent amount of length here, considering, and like I said, there was no issues or anything as far as how her toenail was growing. It was very strong and attached as far as the damaged part and the part that was growing in. So there was no need for me to like cut that off or anything like that. It wasn't extremely lifted, nothing like that. So I'm just squaring it out and adding a tiny bit of length, right? But do you see the length that I did add on her is already, it's not much longer than what she has, because like I said, she wears those boots. So even if this was her real toenail, it should be about this length, literally just to not even the full tip of her toenail. When you guys see me doing it from this angle, it always looks longer than from the client's view. So what I decided to do next was just, like I said, go ahead and do this as regular. I'm gonna go ahead and fill in the bead for the cuticle area, and the rest of the product I typically will bring down towards the free edge of the nail, because that's going to add extra strength and coverage, because you do not want a lot of product in the cuticle area. Having too much product in the cuticle area is just as dangerous as putting a tip on someone's toenail, because that makes it like bottom heavy. So if you were to trip or do anything, because the acrylic is so thick in the cuticle area, it's going to lift right up. It's not going to be as flush as you need it to, and it's really going to pop up and possibly hurt somebody. All right, so at this point I decided, okay, when I do this, right, it's not to like necessarily make it longer, but you have to realize whatever length you make the toenail with application, when you file it, it's going to be shorter. So typically I will, if I feel like, okay, this is not long enough as far as what the length will be when I file, I will add that little bit of an extra bead to go ahead and square it out. So either I don't have to file as much, or I'll use it to add a little bit of length so that when I file, it can be even more squared out. So this particular time, it was more to square it out now so I could file less later on. You know what I mean? So just keep in mind, most of this video is sped up because you guys have seen me do these techniques before. And this video is very long because the second toenail was the one that took a little bit more, I don't want to say finesse, but it was a longer process simply due to the fact of the toenail was shorter and it had to build around the edges of the skin. All right, so yeah, this is pretty much how that went. I really advise you guys to, if you are providing acrylic toenails, please educate yourself in the actual, like, behind the scenes of how toenails grow, how it works, why it's important to do things as an overlay and not as nail tips. If you have not gone to school and you think like nail school is like, oh, it's for nothing, it's not for nothing, because that's how I know how badly it can get if you put tips on toenails, and the differences between fungus and discoloration from damage. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and file this toenail, and I'm gonna continue to talk to you guys about like damage versus fungus for a second. There's a lot of people, honestly, I think people are just haters, but like, you wouldn't believe the type of comments I get about people who've been doing nails for 10 years and telling me what's fungus and what's not. Like, don't, like, you know, if you think about it, why would I publicly come on here and tell y'all it's not fungus if it really was? Like, that would just make me a straight up liar. And, you know, like, I'm not really cool with that. This is my profession, this is my craft. I feel like my clients would be outraged. Please do not just believe anyone who just automatically says like, oh, this is fungus, oh, I know what I'm talking about, because half the time people don't. Like, unless somebody is really a educated and licensed nail tech, then the knowledge that they're getting that from is from other people probably just telling them the differences between X, Y, and Z, or maybe things that they're just looking at on the internet. But there are a lot of like situational examples of things where you have to use your knowledge as well as context clues to figure out what's going on. Things are not always so straightforward. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes clients don't tell the truth. Sometimes just from looking at something, it can look like one thing versus the other. You got to know how to ask questions so you can come to the proper conclusion. A lot of people see damage or discoloration and think, oh, fungus, boom. And some people will still put acrylic toes over that, which is a no. We're not doing that, all right? So just know, anything y'all see on my channel, if it's fungus, I'm going to tell you that, and I'm not going to continue to put acrylic toes on top. I'll tell you that much. And if you're really that curious on what's going on, you can follow me on Instagram. I post every single client on my story, the whole process of every single client that I take every single day of the month. You see what I'm saying? So if you're really that curious of what's going on or how to keep up with these clients, go ahead, follow me on Instagram, Nailsbyprettyface. Okay. So here we go. We're filing the toenail, and at this part I was getting very excited because I'm like, girl, the discoloration is not really even showing through. Like, you're very lucky in that regard. The toenail's coming out perfectly square and really nice. Her other little toes were actually very nicely shaped, so I can imagine that if her real toenail grew out some, she wouldn't even really need acrylic if she didn't want it. A lot of people use acrylic toes either because they like the fact of they don't chip like how gel polish does, or just for the strength. So sometimes you see people, it's like, girl, you don't even need that, but they want it because of those, you know, minor things or whatever. So when you're filing, you're going to make sure that everything is nice and smooth, especially for damaged toenails. You really got to kind of work around certain things, but you want to make sure it looks as natural as possible. If you do not file this underneath, it's going to be really thick under there, so you can see how I'm kind of checking and looking. But this is because her real toenail is not at the tip. So if someone's real toenail was at the tip of this, I wouldn't just continue to file underneath so much, because I don't want to like necessarily take away the integrity of their real toenail. But yeah, you'll kind of get the hang of it. You want everything to be nice and flush and looking good. It's, I mean, honestly, I don't want to say it's self-explanatory, only because you guys can literally see it, but I'm just telling you this to like coincide with the visuals that you are seeing. Okay, acrylic toes should look natural. They shouldn't look like somebody really like did them for real, because it is a natural overlay. Well, the way I do it is a natural overlay. All right, so this is the end result of this big toe. I feel like it came out beautifully. I feel like it's amazing that you can't even tell what happened underneath. Although this damage will need to grow out and it's still there, for now she has a really nice fix. Okay, so as of now, I'm pretty sure okay, here we go. So we are prepping this toenail. I am still in the process, well, I was figuring out how much is toenail, how much is not. Now this is when I figured it out, because as you're, oh, okay, so clearly I needed to change the angle. As you are prepping and filing like this, you will be able to figure out, hey, what's hard enough and what's not. And this is further how I figured out, like, okay, this is how it's growing in. And I did let her know, like, sometimes when toenails are completely gone, they grow in, it starts to look like mounds. and even on your fingernails, because I lost a whole fingernail one time, or pretty much almost like down to the cuticle, and as it started growing back, it grew as a mound, but when it like turned flat. So I don't know what's the science behind that, but I do know that toenails growing in like this may not stay like this thick looking for a while, but I really think it's due to your toenail is trying to regenerate all the layers that it needs to attach, not only to the nail bed, but to just get back to where it needs to be. And as it grows out, it kind of flattens itself out, or like all the layers kind of come together and make a free edge and do its thing. It looks scary at first, but I told her I feel like it's gonna grow in pretty normally based off of what it looks. It might be a little more narrow than what she had before, but at least she'll have something. Okay, so at this point I am trying to remove as much dust as possible. I do get comments sometimes that's like, how come you didn't remove all the dust? Y'all, sometimes all the dust don't come off. Like, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter how much you do, how much you wipe away. Sometimes you can't get it all, and that's okay, because once you put the primer on the toenail, you can see like it's not going to make as big of a deal. And then like with your nail brush, like I don't know how to explain it, but like it's not as big of a deal as you think, as long as whatever you're doing is not putting the dust into any of your products. Like it's okay, but you can see it kind of just does its own thing. Remove as much as you can and keep it pushing, you know what I'm saying? So of course we're using Young Nails primer, protein bond, and Young Nails liquid as well, and the color is also Young Nails soft white. I mean, not soft white, child, core white, I believe. So it's just for reference. So this one is a little different. Now when toenails are broken down like way down, I do not build, like start with the cuticle area, kind of like you would think I would just put the whole thing on the cuticle area and like, you know, call it good and build off of there. So for this one, I decided to do it kind of similarly to how I did the other one. Normally I might actually put the whole bead on the put the whole bead on what's there and build off of that, but because it was kind of narrow, what I decided to do was go ahead and focus on starting to build those sidewalls first, because if you do not like widen this out to the widest part of the cuticle area, you are not going to have the most support that you need. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I decided to do first, and any excess that I don't need, I did push it towards the cuticle area, because you need to start the process of making it flush. If you don't start making it flush now, you are going to have a very bulky, chunky nail. Now in what is that called? In my experience, when people do have a bulkiness in the middle, or it's damaged where it's unevenly like thick in a lot of different areas, you have to go about it a different way. But I do have videos on my YouTube channel in regards to other damaged nails and working around that. But so you see, the first thing I'm doing is widening the nail, because I need the widest parts, which are near the cuticle area. I need that to be the basis of our sidewalls, because if she did have her full toenail, this is the width that it would be. So that's what we're working on first. Once again, if you do not do that, the strength of your acrylic enhancement is it's not gonna last, because you absolutely need to have those sidewalls for support. Okay, so I'm trying to tuck everything into the cuticle area, right? So that way we can make sure, once again, make sure that it is nice and flush, because we want a beautifully done enhancement. And any excess acrylic that's underneath, because now is where you need to start ridding of any excess acrylic. I'm going to try my best to push it out, because if not, it's going to trap moisture. So this is what I'm doing here. You see, I'm kind of just aligning it up with the toenail, like where the edge of the toenail is. And also we need to start the process of building over the edges of her skin, because she has no toenail up there and the whole thing was gone. Some people's toenails, basically it starts to look more bulbous around, and I can't just straight up put a blob of acrylic and try and build over that. You have to take your time and work in thinner sections and basically build up over it, so that way it doesn't trap moisture. So that's what I'm doing right now, cleaning up the underneath, and so that way it gets over that like bulbous area, so that way the enhancement is nice and flat, and it just overall has a good look to it. Okay, so this is what's going to take the most time. It's really just doing this kind of over and over again. And that's why this toenail alone took at least like probably around 25 minutes, just simply because you have to wait in between. Things need to dry down a little bit, because if you go ahead and add wet acrylic onto acrylic that's already extremely wet, you're gonna have a mess. So that's why I decided, okay, I'm gonna let the free edge dry some, take my time with it, right? And then I'm gonna build some more free edge. So this is what you're gonna see over and over. I didn't show every bit of me doing this because it was so repetitive, but you can see, like, if you don't have the right size bead, if you don't have the proper wetness or dryness, just not the right ratio, it's gonna be hard to deal with. So in this instance, I'm showing you guys, I didn't have a large enough bead, but I was still trying to work with it. But because it wasn't large enough, as I was trying to force it down, kind of like pull it down to become more free edge, and I was shaping it, there was not enough acrylic to bring it down a lot, so it's like it was counterproductive. And then as I was trying to clean it under it, because each layer I have to clean under it to make sure no acrylic is trapped, because that could also hurt somebody as it grows out. But it just wasn't enough acrylic to do what I needed it to do. As you can see, it pretty much split into two halves, and I'm like, this is just gonna take forever. So I tried to keep working with it, and this was part of the reason why it took so long as well, because y'all know I don't like wasting beads. But you guys are gonna see in a second, in the end I decided to kind of just remove it, because I realized this is gonna be taking forever. Like, if I use beads that size, it's gonna take even longer. So what you have to focus on is making sure that as you're extending the free edge, you're also, see how I'm like removing some? I thought like, oh, that would be enough, but no, I ended up just removing that whole little corner. Once I realized, like, this ain't nothing, like this is literally nothing. But basically, once you're trying to extend the free edge even more, you have to have enough acrylic that's gonna extend it enough to where, like, when you square it out, it's not gonna be the same length as what you just had, but also that it's not gonna just be sitting there extremely bulky. Because at this point, I am not wanting to do my cuticle bead yet, because I know by doing it, that is going to cause bulkiness smack in the middle as I keep extending my free edge. So you want to keep extending the free edge first, so that way you can use that cuticle bead to even things out. And this is why I say you got to work in thinner layers, you know what I'm saying? So you guys are going to see me again start with a new bead, and you can see this one is larger. We don't want it too large, but we want it large enough, right? I let it set for just a second, and the goal is to get this length to match up as close as possible to the other length. If this toenail was like shorter or even more damaged, I probably wouldn't have got it to be this exact length, just because I'm like, okay, let me see what's going on, how it's gonna grow out. But yeah, you see right away I am making sure that underneath is clean while I'm letting the bead set on top, because if you go ahead and just bring it down all at once, a lot of that acrylic is going to sink underneath as you're pulling it. So you have to be mindful of that. It honestly is a skill. As much as popular as it is to do acrylic toes and stuff, this is probably why you don't see a lot of people doing it in your own city or town or whatever, because it does take a certain amount of skill to do things like this, and for the enhancements to grow out nicely and not cause damage, and it's just a process. So you guys saw me not only clean the underneath and keep the acrylic on top intact, but continue to build. And this is why I say it does take time, okay? Because it's honestly a slow process, but if you have the patience to do it, it comes out beautifully, okay? Like, absolutely beautifully. So once again, like I said, I don't think I showed every bit of portion of me doing this. I'm gonna show it maybe like a couple more times of exactly what's going on, but I had to do this probably at least 4 times, yeah, somewhere around there. Repeat this process and keep the whole underneath clean. Like I said, it's slow, it takes patience, but if you got the patience to do it, and if you have the knowledge to safely do it, then you're good, okay? So each layer we're doing, you want to make sure you square it out, because it's keeping everything together with the side walls. So that's why you see me patting the sides, pulling the sides, tucking the front, all that stuff, because we want to keep the shape. It can be difficult to not only keep the shape, but keep that same thickness. If you were to look from the side of it right now, you would be able to see that it's coming out nicely, and that from the side, it's pretty similarly shaped. You know what I'm saying? I mean, flatten. So now it's time to do the cuticle bead, because again, I want to keep the layers even. So this is going to smooth out some of those layers, and then also make sure the cuticle is intact, and then so we can continue building. And this is going to give the free edge a chance to kind of dry a little bit. So everything is in process. As far as like stages, it's just different stages where you have to do things. So that's why I said you kind of really have to do some thinking about, hey, how do I do this? Typically acrylic toes will take me an hour and a half. No, yeah, for reconstructions, because most people only need it somewhere for the big toe. So it just takes me like an extra 10 to 15 minutes than regular acrylic toes. So I've just been doing it for so long, you guys, and I've done so many reconstructions on big toes by now that I have kind of figured out like, hey, what works and what doesn't. But yeah, if her toenail was shorter, I probably would have left it like this. But I think I go ahead and do a little bit more extending, because I realize how sturdy, what she has is very sturdy under there. The sidewalls are very sturdy, and I do want to provide as symmetric of a look as possible. But you can see I'm really tucking in the corners, because a lot of times people with damaged toenails, they have areas where the corners are not the same level. Like they might be deeper or shaped differently, and that is because you can't control how a toenail breaks or whatever. And so you have to make sure you get into those pockets. Same with people who have like deep nail grooves on the sides of their big toes. If you don't get into those pockets, moisture is going to get in, and it's just going to be not fun. Okay, if moisture gets in, it's going to soften up what they have, and depending on the damage, that can be terrible, because that means their real toenail is going to essentially kind of crumble from the moisture. Like once they take off the enhancements, whenever they notice, it can cause extreme discoloration, such as greenness, which is why it's usually called greenies, but it can even cause colors darker than that. And I just want y'all to know, an excess of moisture does not always mean fungus. It's only a problem once the bacteria keeps growing and growing and multiplying over time, in which it creates the right what do they call that? Not situation. It creates the right, what is that called? I don't want to say qualifications, but whatever. It creates the right environment. Boom. Creates the right environment for fungus to make itself known. So this is why I talk to my clients as I'm doing their toenails. And even during this point, I'm still talking to her about, you know, how long have you had acrylic toes in the past? Make sure you keep them dry, blah, blah, blah. If you don't want the enhancements anymore, come and get them removed. That's a big deal as well. As you saw in the picture in the beginning of her sister's toenail, her sister have had those toenails for probably 2 months, but you can see how overgrown they are. That at that point, like, she really wanted them off, and I told her, I said, tell your sister that if she don't want to go to nobody, because she said her sister got hella scared once she seen her toenails come smooth off. She said that she wanted them off. One had popped off, I guess, and I told her, I said, tell her not to try and pop the other one off. Either go and get some acetone and remove it herself if she's still really scared, or if she does end up booking with me, she can book the removal. And so that's what she did. So her sister is going to come in a couple of days, and we're going to hook her up as well. So I'm pretty excited for that. Her toenails are not damaged or anything like that, but I know she's really excited to get that old enhancement off, because like I said, it's close to, they said that they've been going there for close to a year, and not once did the nail shop ever remove them. They didn't do anything except for fill them. And the reason that's extremely dangerous is because, imagine, that means that nail tip is attached to their toenail way beyond past where the toenail is attached to the nail bed. So that's why if anything happens, the pressure is not going to be relieved by, hey, I have a contact point on the actual toe itself. No, the contact point is way hanging off the toe, like a diving board, if you can imagine. So yeah, pretty much I'm just kind of extending a little bit more. I'm not going to show any more filing or anything like that, because it's the same exact as what you guys just saw. It's just I wanted to show this one later on in the video, because this did take a little more work and a little bit different of a technique, similar technique to what we just did, just a little more work. And so you can see, finally, I want to make sure that everything is at the same length, not length, what is that called, all the same like evenness on the surface. So this is why you have to do things in layers. You have to kind of inspect, and I was extremely happy with this outcome. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I do have other videos coming soon. I have like a baby gender reveal set that I'll be uploading very shortly. So once again, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for subscribing. I appreciate you. I will be traveling a couple days this week, so if I don't upload anything, I apologize, but I am going to try and upload before and after. Once again, this is the final look, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one.